Open University.
Hello my hags and devils. I wanted to talk a little bit about my creative process in making this new record, which I'm starting, battling against the decay and failure of my body because I've got wax build up in this ear, so it only works if I kind of hold it open physically, or if I insert an earplug, a headphone bud in there, it kind of works as well. So that's a hassle. I have to keep de-waxing it with olive oil, but it's not hurting the music, is it? It is making my ears ring a little bit, though. And also I notice increasingly it's very difficult for me to have the focus, the concentration on a computer screen for a day or 2 days or 3 days without getting terrible astigmatism in this eye. I have to take care of my one remaining eye. So maybe a slightly slower pace of production on this record, but hey, there's almost 3 months left in this rainy season Japan slot where I normally record. I recorded the last couple of albums that way too. It's not that rainy actually. There's been a week of cloud and some rain, and it's nice and fresh. It's not yet the really hot part of the summer. So I wanted to, well, first of all, why do you decide to make a record? My life is so much in slots. I tour for 3 months. I suppose a lot of musicians do it this way. You tour and promote for a certain amount of time, then you come home and it's time to start a new project and to record again. So I had 2.5 months really of touring, concerts, making money in Europe. And a lot of that time was spent in Berlin, but also a lot in Italy, because I was on trains. I've kept you up to date with my travels. And I was in these beautiful places like Venice and Milan and down south, Palermo especially, impressive to me. And I think some of that has rubbed off because the first 2 songs really to be completed in this new record, which doesn't yet have a title, have a very Italian feeling to them. It's slightly deceptive actually. I'm going to let you in on the sound, the secret of the sound on this record, which is that I'm playing most of the music on an iPad, and it's a program which I bought called World Scales. See, I've been obsessed for a while with, ever since the analog baroque days of the late 90s, with approximations of medieval music. I heard an Open University broadcast, interestingly enough, in about 1997. It was a TV broadcast called, I think it's called Henry Plantin Primitive Printer of Antwerp or something like that. You can find the unit references, although you can find a little video clip, but not the clip that with the music in it. It had this fantastic music.
From the middle of the 15th century onwards, the intellectual and cultural life of the West was revolutionised by the development of systems for printing multiple copies of word text. This revolution was made possible by adapting existing technologies and by technological innovations. Not only the printing press, but also the production of suitable paper and inks.
Which I really liked, and which I then used as the basis for Old Friend, New Flame on the Little Red Songbook album. And it's, I've noticed a correspondence at that point when I was inventing this style called analog baroque, which is sort of Musica Antica, Alte Musik. Deutsche Grammophon has a special label called Alte Musik. There's sort of, having worked with the musicians who played at the Globe Theatre, Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, for one of the Kahimi Kari projects, in fact the last Kahimi Kari project that I recorded in London, which was the Journey to the Centre of Me EP, I got really obsessed with these medieval instruments, regals, sackbuts, crumhorns, the honking sounds of them seemed to me very similar to the analog synth sounds of retro things like the Moog synthesizer. So I really continue with that insight, that breakthrough to this day. I think I've described it elsewhere as the first time I really stumbled on my own style, but in a sense it can veer a little bit dangerously towards some 70s bands who had a kind of folk rock, a heavy folk rock style. That could be Still I Span, or it could be, oh God, what was that band? There's actually a really good band who also played in Shakespeare productions, and they made a record called Mugwumps and Mushhorns or something. I've forgotten the name. But it's always bugged me that when you do these approximations of antique instruments, you're often using boring modern scales, the standard scale which everyone's been on since, Western music for the last couple of hundred years, the well-tempered scale. So I thought there must be an app out there which allows you to create scales to reproduce the Islamic scales, the sort of Arabic, Middle Eastern scales, Far Eastern scales even. So I searched and I found this thing, World Scales, which is actually fantastic and it's also got some great built-in voices. That's actually a violin, but there's some much more abrasive sounds on here. The Turkish kanun is like an oud. It's got lots of ouds and stringed Arabic strings, very good. And this was somewhat spurred by having seen the Venice Biennale, and there was a really great little installation, I've forgotten the artist's name actually, of Islamic singers, many of them transgender singers. That led me to discover or listen to Kulthum. And so actually there's kind of sleight of hand where I'm passing off these Arabic scales, and I'm using mostly a scale called Bayati. I don't know anything about it, it's just the one that pleased my ear most. There's certain, and I also saw in Documenta, there was a fantastic film, an installation in a sort of tent-like building up at the university in Kassel, which included a little snippet of a song called Guerrilla, which used... I just thought, what is it that makes this song so powerful? First of all, it's a song of a liberation struggle. It's got a political element to it, but also it had this Arabic scale which was integral, I thought, to its appeal. And I love, modality. I love the idea that you can switch. You get you can get a certain strangeness. I'm always stretching towards some kind of strangeness. You can get that either by using strange time signatures, or by going into different modes and scales from different cultures. So it's part of my endless search for the other. And this program, I think, is going to be the main sound of the album, this app. So if you want to parody me, you now have the means to do it, but you're going to have to pay like £4 for that. Well worth buying, because you get, for £4 you get a huge pile of exotic instruments. Rather like, when Public Image Limited made their third album, The Flowers of Romance, they famously rented a whole pile of ethnic instruments, and it's mainly dominated, that album, by this enormous gated sound with the snare drum. Dum, 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 but it's got these sort of balalaikas and ouds and things going on as well. And then Leiden, of course, sounds like a muezzin, a sort of Islamic call to prayer. He's got this very high voice. Anyway, that's a distraction. So where did I start? I started with my accumulated experiences of Italy, but I wanted an Italy which was as strange to us, perhaps, as it must have been to Shakespeare. Strange and appealing and different, like another world. Shakespeare, as far as we know, never went to Italy, and yet half his plays are set in Italy, because there was this explosion of culture in the Renaissance coming out of Italy, this fantastic, the power not only of religion, but of homosexuality, of gay artists working for the Catholic Church, and all sorts of, the Borgias and the Venice as a separate republic, a little trading nation in the shape of a single city. These city-states which were vying with each other to be more creative and powerful and soft and hard power. And so in a way, by using these Islamic scales, I've created an Italy of the imagination which is kind of as exotic as, say, Japan is to us now. Well, not to me personally, because I'm looking out at it right now. But yeah, so trying to double the strangeness and the uncanniness and the eeriness as well. So where did this first track come from? If I go back to my first, originally it was called Tornicados. And here's another, I have to go to another secret ingredient on this album, which is a book I bought in the old lady store. I'm a bit worried because the old lady store has been closed ever since I got back. The shutter has been down. I really hope she hasn't died. She's my girlfriend in her mid-80s. A wonderful old lady who runs this bookstore that I frequent here. But I haven't been able to visit it. Where is that book? Hell's Teeth. It's Thomas Nash, The Good Companion and Other Writings, which is, there it is, there, by my bedside. Thomas Nash, The Unfortunate Traveller and Other Works. It's a penguin from the 70s, I guess. And he was a contemporary of Shakespeare. He was a pamphleteer, poet, storyteller, satirist, scholar, moralist, and jester. And some of these, especially towards the end, there's this incredible richness of language. I think there's a connection with what Bowie was doing in his late work. Bowie of A Black Star, you know, 'Tis a Pity She Was a Whore, which of course comes from, takes its title from a, what's he called, John West play. But it's this Elizabethan, squelchy, bloody, brutal, but also subtle language. Also, I've been watching The Duchess of Malfi. We'll come to that because I think that's the cue for my next song, actually. But let me just read a little bit of this at random, because this is how I chose the lyrics for Italian. I was starting to write a song which I knew what it was about, and I thought, this is too boring. I want to write something that I don't know, which is rich and strange. So then did this our Talamantana, or Dr. Hum, thrust himself into the thickest ranks of the noblemen and gallants, and whatsoe'er they were arguing of, he would not miss to catch hold of, or strike in at the one end, and take the theme out of their mouths, or it should go hard. In the self-same order was he at his pretty toys, and amorous glances and purposes with the damsels, and putting bawdy riddles unto them, in fine, etc., etc. I mean, it's just, it's a very rich prose which you have to struggle to understand, because it's notably different from the English that we use today, but it's juicy. And of course, I started this juicy thing with the insults. The list of insults in Scoberlotches, the last album, the title of the last album comes from that, the song Bashi Bazooks. I just googled ancient insults and, you know, Scoberlotches, foreigners, all that stuff. There's a list of about 25 words there, and you're not supposed to know what they mean. It's like when Captain Haddock starts swearing, and out comes all this anachronistic language. But you get the gist of it, that he's very angry and he's swearing and shouting. But it's not rude, and actually that's the point, is that it's actually been Bowdlerized, but in a rather creative way. So these two elements, the World Scales app and Thomas Nash book, are super important for this record so far. But let me just give you a little blast of Tornicados turned into Max Ramish, it was called, at the next stage. So like a bucket crow, wrapped up in grinning hampers, betwixt a bug and blemish, in my little craft, I cast the dice and witness more towards this. You can hear there that it's substantially the finished version, except the drums are just, it's an automatic drumming accompaniment that iTunes, that GarageBand has. And that gives it a rock feeling that unfortunately takes it a little bit too close to 70s folk rock, prog/folk rock, which I did dabble in the 90s and enjoyed dabbling in, but I don't want a rock sound. Ironically, I think I did manage to get something quite rocking in the final version, but stripping out all that funky drumming, busy drumming, and just putting in a kind of tick-tock claves and Japanese drums part instead, and then have all the tension in the detailing in that drum track, and also at the very last moment finding a hit sample from early hip hop, this kind of jink, this thing which that was one of the last things I did. So it became, then it was called John Indifferent, and then it was called Trill. Very much foregrounding those modal anomalies, the scale, the Arabic scale there. Especially on the oud, there's an oud part in the middle of the song which goes dun dun dun, and if you've got even half an ear, you can tell that that's microtonally anomalous. It's different from the Western note there. So if you foreground those, somehow it becomes a great source of excitement. It sounds raw, it sounds angry, and of course, we could say that this type of music is today's equivalent of going back to black music and the blues in the mid-20th century. If you're a white person and you want to buy into the anger of the underclass, today's underclass is the Islamic underclass. It's no longer about black people in America. It's about the Islamic world. And I don't see really anybody going to that angry underclass and saying, hey, there's a power in their music because of their anger. Of course, it's always a vexed question of, are you appropriating? Is this culturally acceptable? But I think I'm simply excited by the sounds, but I'm also excited by the power that you can have in appropriating a revolutionary music. And this was what excited me about in the Partisan song that I heard in the Documenta, which perhaps I can give you a little blast of, because I recorded it. And of course the video becomes a fairly integral part of the song composition process. So it was important to me that Pierpaolo Pasolini appears in my video. I think he's dressed up as Boccaccio because it's his version from the early 70s of the Decameron, which is just a compilation of stories, again, mostly from the Islamic world. The Decameron is based really on the 1001 Nights, and that format and that sort of lively storytelling, as is the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. They all have that common root in an Islamic common ancestor. So again, it's appropriate to make those, to join those dots, to go back to Baghdad, the 1001 Nights, Scheherazade, which is so key to my storytelling. The idea of Scheherazade making up new stories to keep death at bay. It's really what making a new album each year is about as well, keeping death at bay by saying, hey, I've still got a few stories in my back pocket, But also, I love making these cultural connections. And so we've got Pierpaolo Pasolini in the video, and again, I love the textures of that film, the medieval textures. I also looked at his film of the Canterbury Tales, because Pasolini, he made the so-called trilogy of life, where he did the Decameron, did he do 1001 Nights as well, and the Canterbury Tales, those three. He also did Salo, Marquis de Sade's Salo a bit later. But actually for the second song, I go to Fellini for the video, and I go to Satyricon, which is one of my all-time favourite songs. So let's switch to the second song. I was really happy with the way the first song turned out, partly because I worked on it for 2 days really, and I was never happy with it. I kept going back and basically remixing it. There was like an Adrian Belew guitar solo in it from some YouTube tutorial he'd given in the 80s, with him doing that Bowie-ish kind of guitar solo he used to do. And that didn't work either. I had to keep taking elements out, took out the drums, took out the guitar, and just went with this, the modal thing, the scales. What I like is that the arrangement is not predictable at all. It's quite intuitive, but also there's a randomness there's some accidents which happened with pasting and stuff which I kept in because I really liked how I didn't know quite what the song was going to do next. But a very important part in that Italian song was finding a chorus, because basically it's all on one note and it's all on one chord. So all the excitement in the song is from the textures and the scales, the modal, and also the anachronism of that hip-hop hit in the middle of a medieval sounding thing. But of course there's also a Moog bass, a fat soul bass, which gives it a 70s feel as well. So you've got those elements which I like to juxtapose incongruously, but then there's also the fact that the structure has been messed around with in ways that make it quite organic and unpredictable. And that happens also in the next song, the Macbeth song, which started off as a song called Islamophobia and was going to be much more political. And then I thought, that's too much the world of the newspapers. I don't want that world of newspapers. I want a world of the world of art and the world of strangeness, the world of Shakespeare, the world of Boccaccio. That's my world, that humanist. I'm a humanist scholar. This is what I've become in my old age, sitting here in Japan, reading my books, my French and Italian books. I'm an old-fashioned humanist scholar who makes music, So what excites me is not, because actually there had been a news story that very day, the day I was writing the song, about somebody ramming a van into worshippers as they came out of a mosque. Unfortunately, all too common an occurrence. I think there's a danger in coming too close into events, though, and tying your songs too much to stories. Skoberloch's The Last Record was that, because it was an immediate reaction to Brexit, which hasn't yet happened, and who knows if it ever will happen. That's the danger, is that you you look at incremental changes when you look at a newspaper. You don't look at universals, and art tends to look much more at universals, the things which are constants, which don't change on a day-to-day basis, or not part of a news cycle or a political agenda or talking points. So I moved it away from that. I mean, you can hear a little bit of Islamophobia, just for your curiosity. Here it is. It has a nice computer voice in the middle. You hate us more than you could say. Shouting, get back to Iran. They will us with their wrecking van right here beside the mosque in which we pray. Yeah, I thought it was too direct and it was too political, and just that word Islamophobia ties you into all sorts of statements that John Cleese has made or whatever, and I didn't want to be that contemporary, so that changed as well, and that became a song about Macbeth. Actually, I have to confess that the verse structure, the melody, is very much inspired by, because what I do after I finish work is I watch old Sherlock Holmes movies with Basil Rathbone from the 40s, and there's one with an old music hall song in it. The film is called Dressed to Kill. It's from 1946, and here's the song. You'll be able to tell immediately that it's very similar.
When you're walking down a busy London street, Mrs. Orpik to Mrs. Brown, any subject of the crown. Oh, you never know just who you're going to meet, so you better hold your topper in your hand, just in case you meet a lady on the strand. Girls will think you're kind of sweet, and your day will be complete. Oh, you never know just who you're going to meet. Now a gentleman is judged by his appearance.
The funny thing is that this is it's really bowdlerized. You'd expect this to be a very bawdy song, but they've made a version which is so cleaned up for Hollywood. Listen to Watson.
Language first.
A rendezvous for actors, eh?
Watson has scandalised, what on earth is this outlandish place? But actually it's anything but outlandish. It's very, very tame. Certainly not Frank Randall level musical. So I take that sort of melody and verse structure and turn it into my song Macbeth. Actually, it's interesting, David McClymont on Facebook mentioned that it sounded to him a lot like Dedicated Follower of Fashion by the Kinks, but I think that's simply because we both refer back to this sort of English vaudevillian song structure. And it's very catchy. These were the pop songs of the day about 100 years ago. Very catchy. I love people like Rob Wilton as well. I've always liked the English music hall variety, cabaret. Cabaret is the more intellectual end of it, the more political end of it, but of course it was mostly songs for entertainment. So I've ripped that off and turned it into this Macbeth song. It went through lots of lyrical changes. It was originally it had robots and things in it, I think. And then it got lots of elements like Morton Feldman piano and it was Islamophobia. And it's actually like the third. I really messed around with the structure after doing the master. It had like 3 verses, a middle section where it goes a semitone up, and then 3 more verses, and then another end section. And I took it out 2 of the verses and made it much shorter. So now it just has 1 verse and goes into this mysterious middle section. Actually, now it reminds me a little bit of Michael Jackson's Thriller. So I was going to do some Michael Jackson moves, be in a dark alley with some zombies. Because it did turn out very much like that. It's a tribute, obviously, to Shakespeare's Macbeth, and especially the witches with their double, double, toil and trouble, something evil this way comes, this famous speech, which is simplistic, rhythmically and rhyme-wise, very simplistic. It's a bit like William Blake's The Tiger, 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 burning bright. But it's a nice list of all these ingredients which they're putting into their potion, including liver of blaspheming Jew. But also it reminds me a little bit of what I was doing on, say, Monsters of Love, the bat lemur, the dog lizard, all that, the weird hybrid animals at the end of that. And again, it's something to do with the richness and fertility of Elizabethan music, which appeals to me. Perhaps because, I'm looking out at tankers trading with China, coming in laden with goods, and it's very much an Elizabethan global world which I live in, Neo-Elizabethan. We still have Anne Elizabeth on the throne. And in fact, I was thinking, what if I call the album Elizabethan or Neo-Elizabethan, and then she dies just as I'm releasing it? That would be a topicality, because she can't live long, old Liz. But it is very much this global trade and cosmopolitanism which you pick up in Shakespeare and his contemporaries. Britain was incredibly cosmopolitan. So in a way, this might be the answer to the questions posed by Scoberlotchers about the future, that actually, the future of Britain is... what we need to learn from is the original Elizabethan era and the trade and the cosmopolitanism and the openness to Europe. People reading Ariosto and Seneca and Sappho and all these people, these references pepper really quite mainstream literature, like Thomas Nash's pamphlets. Anyway, so the next track I've started working on is actually using Purcell, a bit of Purcell. I was going to use, at the beginning of one of these, the Duchess of Malfi productions I was watching on YouTube, there's a beautiful piece which I think is Purcell, very famous piece with just trumpets. And I thought I would use that, but then I went off and was delving through bits of Purcell and found a very beautiful section of chords, and then really cut and spliced it up, chopped it up and put it in a new order. So I think that'll be the next thing I'm going to work on, and who knows where it will go. It might not be recognizable as Purcell. There'll be something probably of Purcell in it as I finish. So that's all I'm going to talk about today. Giving away some of my secrets. In a way, the mystery is destroyed, but in other ways, there are joys and things to explore beyond the material. And also, it's fascinating to see how you make things your own, even although they have sources elsewhere. You know, they become something which only you could make. Only I could have made these two songs. I don't really see anybody else out there in 2017 making that sound, or even using non-Western scales particularly. Although who knows, perhaps we might be starting something.